When I look back at the days when I was struggling alone, trying to force a single English sentence out of my mouth, I realized something powerful. Fluency was never about talent. It was about awakening a part of myself that had been sleeping for years. I believed that if I could shift my inner world, the outer world would bend with it, because the universe responds to those who dare to move with conviction. I remember sitting alone in a small room, speaking to walls, mirrors, shadows, because I knew that if I couldn't speak confidently to myself, I could never speak confidently to the world. Every word I practiced was like placing a brick on the foundation of a version of me that didn't exist yet, but I felt him, I sensed him, I heard him in my mind long before I ever became him. I realized that fluency isn't learned. It's manifested through repetition, belief, and an almost stubborn refusal to let go of the future you imagine. I used to wake up early, long before the sun, because silence made me brave. I would whisper sentences, then speak them louder, then shout them into the still air as if the universe itself needed to hear my intention. I wasn't just practicing English, I was training my mind to obey me. I wanted my thoughts to flow in English, so naturally that speaking became a reflex, not an effort. I trained like someone preparing for a battle that only I knew was coming. And the more I spoke alone, the more a strange thing began to happen. I felt as if I was having a conversation with an unseen mentor, a telepathic exchange where ideas came faster, clearer, sharper, as if the universe was guiding me toward fluency. That's when I realized that solitude is not emptiness. Solitude is a classroom where the most powerful lessons are taught. I refused to live small, refused to stay silent, refused to let fear steal opportunities from me. I repeated sentences until my tongue stopped resisting. I listened to speeches until certain phrases tattooed themselves on my subconscious. I walked around imagining dialogues, arguing with imaginary interviewers, convincing invisible audiences, because I knew one day the real world would present those moments. And when it did, I would already be ready. I didn't search for people to practice with. I became the person I needed. I became my own coach, my own partner, my own audience. And slowly, English became less of a subject and more of a natural voice inside me. I understood something very important. The universe rewards those who prove they are serious even when no one is watching. I practiced when there was no applause. I improved when there was no encouragement. I kept going when there was no evidence that I would ever succeed. But the energy I created through discipline started attracting clarity, ideas, and breakthroughs. My mind began switching between languages without hesitation. My confidence rose not because I was perfect, but because I trained myself not to panic. I learned to speak even when I felt uncertain. I learned to continue even when I made mistakes. And soon the mistakes reduced, the flow increased, and the fear evaporated, because fear cannot survive in a mind that practices every single day. I didn't wait for a perfect accent. I built a voice that carried intention. I didn't wait for perfect grammar. I built courage that carried me through each sentence. I didn't wait for opportunities. I prepared so intensely that opportunities started to find me. Fluency didn't arrive suddenly. It appeared gradually, like dawn breaking across the sky, slow but unstoppable. Every day I spoke alone was a message to the universe saying, I am ready for the life I'm creating, and the universe responded. As I continued speaking alone day after day, something extraordinary began to happen. English stopped feeling like a foreign language and started feeling like a mental environment I could enter whenever I wanted. It was like discovering a new room inside my own mind, a room where thoughts moved faster and possibilities expanded wider. I realized I wasn't just learning English. I was transforming into a person who could communicate beyond borders, beyond limitations, beyond the small circle I was born into. And this transformation didn't come from textbooks. It came from consistency, from showing up even when I didn't feel like it, from convincing myself that the future version of me was already fluent and I just had to catch up. There were days when I felt tired, when my tongue twisted, when the sentences in my mind didn't match the words coming out of my mouth. But instead of stopping, I treated those moments as signals that I was growing. Growth never feels smooth at first. It feels chaotic, uncomfortable, confusing. But I had learned to trust the process. I knew the universe wasn't testing me. It was shaping me. And every time I felt resistance, I spoke even more boldly, because resistance is the doorway to mastery. I would stand in front of the mirror, look myself in the eyes, and speak as if I were delivering a message to millions. I didn't wait for confidence to appear. I created confidence with every sentence I forced through fear. Something deep within me awakened when I practiced alone. It felt like a telepathic connection with the future, like I was already speaking fluently in another timeline. And every day, I aligned myself closer to that version. I imagined myself giving speeches, traveling, negotiating, teaching, influencing. I saw that future so clearly that my present no longer intimidated me. I believe that if the mind can experience it vividly, the world eventually follows. And that belief became my fuel. Fluency is not a gift reserved for geniuses. It's a reward for those who stay loyal to their vision. The more I practiced, the more English became a natural extension of my thoughts. I stopped memorizing and started embodying. I stopped fearing mistakes and started appreciating them. I stopped comparing myself to others and began competing only with the version of me from yesterday. This shift made all the difference. Every night before sleeping, I would talk to myself about my day in English. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to end my day aligned with the person I was becoming. Some nights were smooth, others were messy, but both mattered equally, because greatness is not built in perfect moments, it's built in relentless ones. And with every word I spoke alone, I felt the universe rearranging circumstances, opportunities, and people who matched the vibration I was creating through my dedication. I learned that when you practice alone, you discover your true voice. You speak without pressure. You make mistakes without judgment. You grow without fear. That freedom is what unlocked my fluency. Speaking alone is not a sign of weakness or loneliness. It is one of the strongest acts of self-belief a person can commit to. I kept going until the day came when I didn't even realize I had switched languages effortlessly. That was the moment I knew fluency wasn't something I achieved, it was something I became. And as I kept becoming that fluent version of myself, I noticed my entire energy shifting. I would walk differently, think differently, respond differently. English was no longer a mountain to climb, it was a flow to step into. I began to sense conversations before they happened, predict expressions, anticipate reactions, as if my mind had unlocked a new instinct. This wasn't just learning, it was alignment. When you practice alone with intensity, your mind starts building neural pathways that turn effort into ease. You no longer try to speak, you allow the words to move through you. That's when English stops being a subject and becomes a frequency. There were moments when I felt a surge of confidence so strong that it felt like telepathy. I could think in English and feel the universe listening. Every sentence I spoke alone echoed with intention. An intention that said, I am preparing for a bigger life. And that intention created momentum. When you speak alone with purpose, you send signals into the unseen, and those signals return as opportunities, ideas, and unexpected breakthroughs. I began to attract moments where my English skills were needed, and each time I stepped forward with a readiness I had earned in silence. I remember one morning speaking continuously for nearly an hour, pacing back and forth, creating imaginary scenarios, responding to invisible interviewers, explaining concepts as if thousands were listening. I wasn't pretending. I was rehearsing for a reality I knew was coming. And the more I rehearsed that reality, the closer it moved toward me. That's when I understood the true power of manifestation. The universe doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your preparation. When you train alone, you're proving that you're serious. And seriousness is a magnet. Soon, English stopped feeling like something outside of me. It became part of my identity. It became the voice of my ambition, my vision, my dreams. And that's why fluency came, because I tied it to purpose. People who learn English only for exams struggle. People who learn it for survival push harder. But people who learn it for their destiny become unstoppable. I wasn't studying English. I was building the life I wanted sentence by sentence. There were times when I stumbled through grammar, mispronounced words, or forgot phrases, but instead of feeling frustrated, I felt alive. Mistakes meant movement. Movement meant growth. Growth meant I was on the right path. Fluency isn't clean, it's chaotic in the beginning, like sparks flying before fire forms. And I embraced that chaos. I let the words flow even when they weren't perfect. I let my voice tremble until it strengthened. I let my thoughts race until they found rhythm. The truth is, fluency isn't born in comfort, it's born in courageous persistence. And one day, without even realizing it, I began speaking to people the same way I spoke alone. Naturally, confidently, freely. That moment proved something to me. The world eventually mirrors what you repeatedly do in private. I didn't wait for someone to teach me. I didn't wait for the perfect environment. I didn't wait for approval. I built fluency with my own two hands, my own voice, my own determination. And that's why no one could take it away from me. Every word spoken alone was worth it. Every silent morning, every late night conversation with myself, every moment of self-teaching, they all added up to a version of me who could stand anywhere in the world and speak with clarity, strength, and purpose. Fluency arrived not because I was gifted, but because I was consistent in moments where most people stop. I spoke alone until I no longer felt alone. I spoke until English felt like home. And as English became a home inside my mind, I started to realize how deeply my inner world had transformed. Speaking alone had awakened a level of self-trust I didn't know existed. I no longer questioned whether I could express myself. I knew I could. I no longer feared conversations. I welcomed them. Because when you train in solitude, you build a strength that doesn't shake in public. I discovered that fluency is not the sound of perfect grammar. Fluency is the sound of a fearless mind. And every day I practiced alone, I was training myself to live without fear. There were moments when I would close my eyes and speak as if I were addressing thousands, imagining the lights, the stage, the energy of an audience waiting for my words. Visualization became my secret weapon. I didn't just practice English, I performed it. Even when no one was watching, I carried myself like someone whose voice mattered. That belief became a bridge between who I was and who I was becoming. And with every imaginary speech, I was sculpting the energy that would eventually carry me into real opportunities. Sometimes the universe tests you not with hardship, but with silence. Moments where nothing seems to change. But I learned that silence is not the absence of progress, it is the incubation period of greatness. During those silent months, my fluency was forming like a seed growing underground. I kept speaking alone, trusting that one day the results would rise above the surface, and eventually they did. English began flowing through me so naturally that even I was surprised at times. My tongue cooperated, my thoughts aligned, my voice strengthened. It felt like the universe had finally opened the door I had been knocking on for years. And the beauty of it all was this realization: I didn't need anyone to validate my journey. I didn't need applause, approval, or permission. I was my own source of momentum. When you rely on others, you grow only as fast as they allow. But when you rely on yourself, you grow as fast as you decide. That was my breakthrough. Speaking alone taught me independence, not just in language, but in life. I remember practicing answers to questions no one had asked me yet. Job interviews, airport conversations, meetings, negotiations, because I knew these moments would find me someday. And when they finally did, I stepped into them with a calmness that surprised everyone. People thought I was naturally confident. No, I was trained confident, alone. In the quiet hours where champions are built. And this is the part most people underestimate. The universe listens to your private dedication more than your public declarations. Anyone can say, I want to speak fluently, but only a few speak for hours when no one is around. Only a few turn solitude into strength. Only a few practice until their voice stops shaking. And those few become fluent, not because they're special, but because they're committed. English became the bridge between my present and my future, between my limitations and my potential, between the life I had and the life I wanted. Speaking alone carved that bridge with patience and persistence. And with every word I spoke into the empty room, I wasn't just learning a language, I was rewriting my destiny. I realized something profound. Fluency is not something you chase, it's something you grow into. One sentence at a time, one attempt at a time, one brave moment at a time. And the world eventually bows to the person who refuses to quit. Today, when I speak, I carry the echoes of all those quiet nights and early mornings. I carried the determination of the person who practiced without applause. I carry the energy of someone who manifested fluency through sheer will. And that energy follows me everywhere, into conversations, opportunities, and new chapters of my life. I didn't speak English fluently because I was gifted. I spoke English fluently because I refused to walk away from the future I saw in my imagination. I stayed loyal to that vision until it became my reality. And that is how I became fluent. Alone, but never truly alone, because the universe was listening the whole time.